A question that I get asked from freelance motion designers and studio owners a lot is if they niche down, will it scare away their other clients? Now, I chatted with studio owner James recently at an event called Freelancers and Friends, and he definitely shared this sentiment.
I'm afraid of niching. I'm going to be honest with you.
So in this video, we discuss what niching down can look like if you're successful and how your positioning can really help you to stand out.
I like talking about positioning a lot because then I think you can be like, oh, well, this is our process and this is how we do things as well. And I think a lot of those kind of things can really help you to stand out too.
We also discussed how productized services and packaging can really help you to market your motion design business.
You know exactly what the product is, you know what problem it solves. It just makes marketing so much easier.
I had a really fun chat with James, so I hope you enjoy it.
I'm afraid of niching. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yes.
Let's
talk about it.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So I put my feet up and
Yeah. Let's have a coach.
have a little therapy session.
Yeah.
And here's some of my other people might have other thoughts. One is, look what happened at lockdown. If I'd have niched in hospitality or
yes.
So there's that fear. There's also I remember going to I won't say who it is, but I remember we were doing some overflow work for an agency that niched in pharma. They literally had like banks of desks that were like, I got the tour and it was like, this is the kidney desks. I was like, what? And it's like people were waking up every day and figuring out how to animate kidneys, and I was like, oh man, just shoot me now. Like, so I that's an extreme example, but I love the variety. But I also get the tension of everyone pays more to see a specialist, everyone, all of that rationale. So how do you go all in? Like, what are the things that give you that confidence? And how do you know which niche you're going to choose?
Yeah, so I think there's so much to unpack here, but I'll do my best. So I think first what we need to think about when we think about like niching down, I don't think it's just about like industry and market. Like obviously that's like the go-to what everyone thinks about because like it makes sense. Like, oh, I'm the motion designer like for doctors or something. That's always a rubbish example, but always comes into my head. But that kind of thing where you're like, go into like a certain like type of other market or industry. But then you can also think about like, well, okay, do we do like this one style, and I feel like that's maybe like getting less and less of a thing, but that's definitely a thing where like people go to you because they know like you do that one thing really well. Skill as well, like I feel like that's one that's quite difficult because, if you remember like a long time ago when like things were a bit harder to get hold of, like think of like Flames and different things like that, where you're like the only person that like has that skill and has access to that like software and things like that. That's also hard now because all the tools are so accessible, right? We all kind of have access to them. So there's like different ways to do that, but then there's also thinking about like your product offering, and I think you can kind of niche down in that way as well. And also like process as well, come on to that. So like one of my students, Luke Stanley, he basically like came to me and said, I really want to, niche down into just doing motion brand guidelines. And I just want to do that like every day, so that's like for different companies and different industries, isn't it? But it's like, it's almost like a motion design product, so it's like, he's like offering the same thing to them over and over again. And what's really cool about that too, is like, he can get like really good at that and develop all of his processes and like make it really like slick and more efficient, and then that means that he'll make more money and save more time and all of that kind of stuff too. So I think that's really awesome. But also I think, sometimes we mix up like niching down and positioning, and I also do this as well. So I think it's worth like talking about the difference. So like when you're thinking about like, how do I position myself in the industry to stand out? It might also be about like, what's our mission, what's our values, how we're explaining them as well, as opposed to like niching is usually like, oh, we're going down this kind of vertical, So I think it's worth just distinguishing between those. And I think sometimes I mix them up and use them interchangeably as well. So it's worth reminding myself as well. Yeah, I like talking about positioning a lot because then I think you can be like, oh, well, this is our process and this is how we do things as well. And I think a lot of those kind of things can really help you to stand out too. So like if you're thinking about about what can I post on LinkedIn? You know, everyone's always asking me like, what can I post on social media that isn't just my work, especially animators, because, you know, you can't like churn out like an animation every week. It's ridiculous. But you can start talking about like behind the scenes and your process and like bringing like more of you and your personality. And obviously that's easier if you're an individual, but if you're even like a studio, thinking about like what as a studio is our mission and our values, and how can we start like communicating that through like the kind of content and stuff, and like trying to, you know, connect more with other people like that. So I know we kind of moved on a bit from niching, kind of moved into that, but
good.
I think that's like an easier way to start, right? Because like, although positioning is hard and thinking about, oh, what's my mission and my values and all this stuff is hard. But if you just want to even start thinking about, okay, well, how can I like assess each project that I do and go, well, I like this one because of this. And then, well, let's try this client. I like that because of that. And like, is there like a little pattern forming, you know, or something like that? Or is it like a certain type of client? And then that means that then you can start to figure out, okay, well, I like these types of clients. They all kind of are in this sort of area, or they do the same kind of thing, and they kind of go to events like this. Do you know what I mean? You can start like sort of building the map a little bit for yourself. And I feel like that's helpful.
You touched slightly on sort of product
Yes.
and package kind of thing. Yeah, just give us your take on that.
Yeah, I think it's the way I like to explain productized services is it has to be like the same deliverable every time. Also has to be constrained by like timeline, and then also by price, right? So like one thing that always comes to my mind like is like, you know, I'll build you a website in a week and it costs this much and these are how many pages you get and things like that. It's quite easy, I think, for web designers and stuff like that to think of that. Or like a certain type of graphics package, maybe like you just do like graphics packages for YouTubers or something like that. Like, I don't know how lucrative that would be these days, you know, but that's like a good example. Like if you're an animator, you would give them a lower third, you would give them an intro, do you see what I mean? And you would say, this is the timeline I'm doing it. You're like dictating everything. And that's how I explain like productized services.
What's your take on it? Does it reduce the friction? Is it a good thing to explore? Is it easier to buy?
Well, yeah, I think so, because you're clear about what it is. So the problem, especially that I see in the motion design and animation industry, is like, well, more in motion design, because people think like, what is motion design? Do you know what I mean? Like people don't even really know what it is sometimes. So they might not know that it solves their problems. So you've got this like big group of people who know they have a problem, but they don't know that maybe like motion design is the solution to that problem, like helping them sell more products or whatever it is. Yep. So like usually if we're like freelance animators or motion designers, we like serving a small group of people who know about motion design. They know that's the solution to their problem. But if you think about like who could use motion design or animation, it's like everyone, like loads of people, you know what I mean? Like probably every single business, but they might not really know what it is, you know, and maybe that doesn't apply to everyone. But just thinking about, or like, if you're a sound designer, do people really understand like how important sound design is to animation, how it's like almost like making up 50% of like how good something is, you know? Like it's our job to kind of explain that to our clients. And I feel like we find that really hard. The easier way to do that is if you like make a productized service, you know exactly what the product is, you know what problem it solves. It just makes marketing so much easier. You know, I think it's hard to get there and make sure that it is something that people want and like lots of people want, and that you can do this like repeatable service. But I think once you're there, then it's easier to market. Whereas custom stuff, I think is more difficult to market.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I'm guilty of this, is I think everything we do is important to everyone. Do you know what I mean? Like working on my own, our own website is like the worst job for me, because I'm like, no, this is amazing. And someone else goes, no one cares. I'm like, yes, they do. If they only knew, they would really care. And it's just not true. Like, so focusing on the problem, I think, you know, I remember someone said, no one wants a 1/4 inch drill. They want the 1/4 inch hole. And so the problem that you solve is a real, but finding out what the problem is in our industry is sometimes tricky, and it depends who the customer is, right?
Exactly. And that's where the niching comes in, and that's where productized services come in. And it's not like you can't do that and do custom work as well.
Yeah.
Like I feel like everyone thinks like, oh no, I have to, I mean, obviously it's hard it's hard to like, because maybe you'd have to have like 2 different websites or something like that. But the way I see like what we do as creatives going, I feel like we need to get better at communicating these kind of things. And I think just even to like try and do like a test of that and try and start talking to people about some sort of offering that you do that maybe is just on the side to start with, I think it's a really good thing to start thinking about, because these things are the things that make you stand out. If I go and meet like 5 freelance motion designers and they all say, yeah, I do 2D animation, I'm like, cool, like I love you all and it's amazing. But like, what do you do that's different from these other people? You know, like obviously your work might be slightly different. And
I'm so glad you said that, because I had a secret question in my head that was like, can you fake niche? Which isn't what you said, but it's how I interpret. And that is to say, like I remember seeing an agency full service, and then they don't necessarily have a niche, but then they released this new business with this.
Yeah,
but I knew it was the same team, same people, same amount of time they've got, but just in aerospace. And we do some stuff in aerospace. I was like, oh crap, should have done that. But it was genius. It was like they present as niche because they do genuinely have some things to say in that space and some proprietary knowledge and all of that sort of stuff. But they haven't cut off the rest of the
exactly. You don't have to go like
they're just they're communicating around the niche, which I think is a really smart way. Yes. What's your name first?
Caroline.
Hi, Caroline.
My question is around the productization and pricing. Would you say it's a good idea to quite openly share, I have this product at bronze, silver, gold, and share the price very openly on your website or on your social media? Or would you say pros and cons of just having it as a product, this is the process, but you reveal price in conversation later? How open should you be about that?
Yeah, I think it depends. And I think you could do like a staged approach. So probably what I would do initially, it was almost like run it as like a beta like of the thing. So, you know, like you try it out with a few clients, you make sure it's like the right price. And do you see what I mean? I wouldn't dive into that like straight away. And then when you have confidence in that and the client and you know that it is the right price for them, I feel like it works especially well when you are doing more custom work and you're like, actually, some people want to solve this problem, but they don't have the budget. And maybe that's like the kind of lower pricing you do for them, and then the custom work like sort of comes later or something like that as well. So you could sort of almost like tier it up a little bit like that. Does that make sense? So I feel like you could take it through a process of like, well, this is a beta version, you know, and I'm not gonna like shout too much about the price. I'm gonna make sure that it's right for the client, like have a conversation with them about it before I kind of like release it to the world. And then you could also do like a bit more of a tiered approach. I think you mentioned this, like, you know, where you have maybe your custom work at the top and then you have like a middle tier and then a lower tier, and you sort of let the client sort of choose, you know, and then that we get onto like price anchoring and stuff like that, where you have like a very high kind of price product at the top and then like the middle one, the lower one, and just psychology says like most people go for the middle one. Yeah, you know, like everyone knows this because everyone looks at all these like SaaS companies and they always have it, right? So it obviously works, you know. Unfortunately, there's not like one perfect answer, but I think it's good to talk about these ideas and explore them and different business models, because it can really help you, you know, to serve more clients and make more money and grow your business.
I'd just a random one on package stuff. I would think about what you name them as well. So bronze, silver, gold, there's an inherent quality attached to that. And actually the quality of everything you do is probably going to be gold. But if you call it like slow and steady, no one wants that.
Yeah.
So and then if you call it like ambitious and good, you wouldn't call it that. But you know what I mean? And then if you call it like on speed, then
I love your examples.
You might get arrested. But you know what I mean? That there's a I think attaching it to ambition more than quality is actually psychologically a really good way of presenting it.
If you want to learn more about pricing your work so that you can get paid more, then check out this video next, where I read the biggest book on pricing so that you don't have to.